Good morning, everyone. Your morning weather briefing for this June 15th finds that there are no major changes in the forecast versus what I presented yesterday. Still, a big story in the near term is the intense heat and humidity that is going to be seen across the Corn Belt in the near term. Heat expanding across a big portion of the Corn Belt for today, covering all of the Corn Belt for the weekend, and a big portion of the region still seeing some big time heat on Monday before temperatures moderate for the 6 to 10 and 11 to 15 day time frame. Still significant rainfall chances throughout the bulk of the 2-week forecast as well. Looking at the QPF map for this morning, I would consider this map as somewhat too wet for especially the southeastern half of the Corn Belt, and I'll try to draw in there exactly the area that I think would be mostly of my own disagreement with what is shown. I think that area that I just outlined there would be an area that I think that the QPF map is going for bigger rains than probably what will fall during this 5-day time frame, but that obviously means that the big rains that they are showing across the northern and northwestern portion of the Corn Belt and across a lot of the plain states, those are big rains that I really do not have any disagreement about. But with regards to eastern Nebraska, a lot of Iowa, especially in the southeast and areas to the east and south of there, I think this map is overdoing rainfall amounts to some degree. For the day 6 to 7 time frame, this is largely a map that is based off of the GFS, just like the previous map was, although the European and GFS models are not in big disagreement with regards to this period. I think that there should be some widespread good rains in this period in the plain states. Details of the Corn Belt rainfall forecast in this period, probably not much more than a guess at this point. As usual, look for rainfall coverage in the Corn Belt to be less than this map shows, but rainfall amounts probably bigger. Afternoon high temperatures yesterday. Note that we did start to see some extreme heat working its way into western and southwestern portions of the Corn Belt with 90+ degree temperatures. Note that a big portion of Nebraska saw 95 to 100 degree temperatures, and such temperatures were seen to the south of there. To the northeast, though, was much cooler weather, and it was the battle zone area between that cooler air to the northeast and the big heat in the far southwestern Corn Belt and areas to the south, which is where the focus of the rainfall was during the last 24 hours. Of course, some heavy amounts of rainfall seen across a sizable portion of Iowa during that period. Looking at radar estimated rainfall since 7 o'clock in the morning yesterday, you can see that as expected we have seen significant shower and some severe thunderstorm activity across far northern portions of the northern plains, but obviously the elephant in the room again is the big rains that were received over the last 24 hours across a big portion of Iowa. Wanted to show this morning exactly what that storm system looked like yesterday on a satellite basis. This is a satellite loop that starts during the very early morning hours yesterday at around 6 or 7 o'clock in the morning Central Time, and loops its way through the very early afternoon hours, and you can really just see the intense nature of the thunderstorm complex that hit especially Iowa during the morning hours yesterday. You would think that as a weather forecasting community or with regards to the models that we could anticipate a rain event like this, but it just shows you the extreme nature and the extreme inability that we have right now in forecasting the details of the summer thunderstorm complexes many times. Was there a chance for rainfall yesterday? Well, certainly that there was. I mean, when you have such warm air working into a region like what we are seeing right now, you're going to be having some thunderstorm chances, and they were certainly in my own forecast, but a rain event like is being shown in the satellite loop, certainly nothing even close to that anticipated. So again, just shows you some of the limited forecasting capabilities that we have with regards to summer thunderstorm situations. Many times a seemingly innocuous situation can produce the type of rainfall and the mesoscale convective system like we had in Iowa and nearby areas yesterday. As far as what is going on this morning, we are trying to see another area of thunderstorms develop this morning as the warmer air works further eastward into the Corn Belt, trying to get going right now with a narrow line of thunderstorms from Wisconsin and into Illinois. Most likely, though, this is activity that will last through about the mid-morning hours and then will be dying off after that. With regards to the forecast for the weekend, is going to be a situation where a ridge of high pressure is going to be dominating most of the Corn Belt to keep most of the Corn Belt dry. But again, ring of fire activity, pretty much a classic situation, is going to be making far northwestern portion of the Corn Belt quite wet. Looking at a forecast of surface features that's of 7 o'clock in the morning tomorrow, again, you can see that the bulk of the Corn Belt is dry at that time, but ring of fire activity going to be dominating, especially in the northern plains and far northwestern portion of the Corn Belt. Really not much change as we get towards 7 o'clock in the morning on Sunday. Again, big ridge of high pressure keeping most of the Corn Belt dry, but on the northwestern side of that ridge, ring of fire activity once again producing significant and probably some locally heavy rains across the far northwestern Corn Belt. Even as we get towards Monday morning, again, ridge of high pressure still dominating most of the Corn Belt, but once again, ring of fire activity again dominating northern and northwestern portion of the Corn Belt. So it is going to be a situation where the overall rainfall pattern is not going to be changing very much for the next 3 days. A lot of the Corn Belt being dry, but in the northwestern portion of the Corn Belt and for southern portion of the northern plains, a daily threat of shower and thunderstorm activity for today right through the end of the weekend. A lot of it significant or even heavy in nature, and those areas will eventually see some pretty big rainfall amounts. As we get towards the middle of next week, though, the ridge of high pressure will be breaking down, and we will be seeing rainfall moving back into the heart of the Corn Belt at that time, something that is indicated by the time we get to late in the day on Tuesday from both the European and the GFS weather models. Once we get to Monday and right through the end of the 10-day forecast, it should be a situation where there's going to be rainfall falling somewhere in the Corn Belt on every day in that period. So when looking at 10-day rainfall forecasts as a whole, again, as usual, emphasizing you can't believe the details of these rainfall forecasts, but you can see pretty obviously that all of the models right now are suggesting significant rainfall chances really anywhere in the Corn Belt, with some heavy rainfall amounts somewhere in the Corn Belt as well. As far as my own guesses this morning, I would favor more towards the northern and western portion of the Corn Belt with your bigger rainfall amounts during the next 10 days, especially central and northern portion of Wisconsin, anywhere in Minnesota, anywhere in South Dakota, most anywhere in Nebraska, most anywhere in Kansas, and probably into northwestern portion of Iowa as well. My least favorite area for rainfall during the next 10 days, more towards eastern portion of the Corn Belt, especially Indiana and Ohio. Again, a big story in the near term is the type of heat that is going to be seen. Central and western portion of the Corn Belt seeing widespread 90 to 95 plus degree heat already for tomorrow. Such heat all across the Corn Belt for the weekend. And then even southeastern portion of the region still seeing that type of heat for Monday. Looking at a temperature forecast once again as we get towards tomorrow. Note the extensive area of 90 and even 95 plus degree heat. Some small pockets of 100 plus degree heat, especially across southwestern portion of the Corn Belt and areas to the south of there. There's that ridge of high pressure that is going to be dominating the Corn Belt for this weekend period. Note the well above normal heights and the 588 line poking its way well into the heart of the Corn Belt during that period. Again, kind of a classic situation for a ridge of high pressure bringing in intense heat for a big portion of the region. Again, though, consistent with forecasts of recent days, it is a heat wave that is not going to be lasting for very long. Already some cooler air working into far northwestern portion of the Corn Belt on Monday, a bigger portion of the northwestern Corn Belt getting into cooler air on Tuesday, and then only far southeastern portion of the Corn Belt not into cooler air by the time we get to Wednesday. The type of heat that we are going to be seeing in the near term is not going to be repeated at any point then for the rest of the 2-week time frame. Looking at 500 millibar charts by the time we get to 7 o'clock in the morning on June 25th, or at the very end of the 10-day time frame, you can see that by that time any ridging has moved back into far northwestern portion of the nation with a trough of low pressure in the eastern U.S. Looking at 500 millibar charts for the very end of the 11 to 15 day time frame, ridging in far western portion of the nation, some ridging in far northeastern portion of the nation in between a trough of low pressure. That's certainly not a cool weather pattern by any stretch of the imagination, but again, extreme heat like we are seeing right now is not suggested by that weather pattern at the end of the 11 to 15 day period. A bit of a northwest flow aloft, probably some disturbances moving over top of the dome of high pressure in southwestern portion of the nation. I would certainly not consider that as a dry weather pattern indicated by the 500 millibar charts at the end of the 11 to 15 day period either. Internationally this morning in Brazil, still the dry season. Northern Safrina corn areas of Brazil, some modest rains for the next 2 weeks in the south. Want to mention this morning that as expected, we have seen significant rains in some of the western wintergrain and summer row crop areas of the former Soviet Union. As expected, some 1/2 to 1.5 inch rainfall amounts across western Ukraine and areas to the north of there, getting into Belarus and some portions of central district. Overall, though, for the next 2 weeks, still a decidedly below normal rainfall pattern going to be seen across all of the wintergrain areas of and summer row crop areas of the former Soviet Union. Most of the rain that is shown in that map is going to be occurring in the very near term. Most of the area looking at no rainfall at all by Sunday, Monday through the rest of the 10-day time frame, and below normal rainfall for the 11 to 15-day period as well. Rainfall in Europe during the next 2 weeks, some very nice amounts in the former Yugoslavia and nearby areas of Romania, otherwise below normal rainfall dominating Europe during the next 2 weeks as well. Over in the spring grain areas of the former Soviet Union, still looking at widespread significant rainfall there during the next 10 days, with temperatures for the most part remaining below normal. In China, still a wonderful rainfall setup for the next 2 weeks for the corn and soybean areas of Manchuria. That rainfall evenly divided throughout the 2-week time frame. Forecast continues to trend wetter for the North China Plain. A lot of that rain for southern portions of the North China Plain in the 6 to 10 and 11 to 15 day time frames. It will be just in the 11 to 15-day period when the rainfall increases more for northern portions of the North China Plain. Certainly not a wet forecast for Canada during the next 10 days. The very modest rains that you see on this chart mainly for today. The rest of the 10-day forecast will be dry throughout the Canadian prairies. They will likely see some rainfall returning in the 11 to 15-day period. Mild temperatures in the near term for Canada, but most of the latter portion of the 1 to 5 day time frame and into the 6 to 10-day period featuring temperatures running easily above normal. In Australia, still clearly not the weather pattern that is needed there. A lot of the rain that is shown in southeastern section of Australia will be occurring during the near term. Otherwise, widespread below normal rainfall all across Australian wheat areas for the next 2 weeks. Finally, for this morning in India, most of the 5 to 7 day time frame featuring a weak monsoon across India, but you can see a fairly decent increase in monsoonal activity as we get to the week 2 portion of the 2-week forecast. That's what I have for this Friday. Everyone have themselves a great day and an even better weekend.